We're talking about the Westchester Women's March, which is taking place this Saturday, October 2nd. My guests are Margaret Bradbury, Jimena Francella, and Amy Vele. Thank you, ladies, for joining me today. And I'd like to hear about this. What is the Women's March?
Sure, I can take that one, Mara. The Women's March that we're co-sponsoring is in response to some legislation that was recently passed. And it's really about highlighting the need that we have to continue to provide safe, legal access to abortion, which is healthcare. And as I'm sure people have heard, this is being eroded by different legislation. So we put this march together. There's several marches that are and rallies that are going on across the country. We're sort of semi-independently organizing this march in Westchester. The sponsors, I think, we're up to like 40 grassroots groups from Indivisible, different political groups, civic groups that are all coming together to sponsor this march.
And the target is, if I'm understanding correctly, reproductive freedom. Is that?
Yeah, and I think
abortion choice.
Abortion choice, the no discontinuation of current legal healthcare options for women's bodily autonomy.
So why are you doing it now?
Well, we think that is critically important. As you probably have seen, for the last couple of years, there has really been a threat to overturn Roe versus Wade. And sadly, we have reached the point that it's a reality. The law that was passed in Texas in May, making it basically banning abortion in the state and making it so restrictive that at 6 weeks, women will not be able to have an abortion, and even making it more punitive by having anyone who is involved in the process, from healthcare providers to the women, and even including a taxi driver who may be taking a woman to a medical appointment, will be, punished if they assist. So it is really, quite frightening that in our country, who has fought, for many years for the rights of so many people, that women have reached this point. It is really tragic, and it's going to have a huge impact on women.
Is this march timed to coincide or come near to Supreme Court arguments?
Yes, I think that is absolutely critical, because we know that there's an upcoming case that is going to challenge Roe versus Wade. So it is now really important for all of us to unify behind giving women, a choice over our bodies, which was a protection that we've had all these years and that now we could absolutely lose.
So who are you hoping to impact by this march? Whose mind are you trying to persuade or show support to?
So I'm actually one of the speakers for the march. I have been asked by Jimena, who is also one of the sitting members for the Hispanic Democrats of Westchester. And this opportunity really is mostly about sharing stories. At least for me, it's about being able to share this story and share my personal impact and my benefit from having those rights, the reproductive rights, and being able to obtain an abortion in a safe way. And I think more than anything, being able to share that personal story is also opening up a space for women to say, there is no shame in having had an abortion. There is nothing to feel guilty about, and being able to destigmatize something that happens so often for so many young women and just women throughout the US. The fact that we could potentially lose something as important as this is really frightening. And I think being able to stand with women and having this kind of march and this space to tell others that we're here, and the women who have had these experiences should not be shamed or made to be feel less than, is really, really important. And as a young woman myself, that is really important to me as well.
What, if any, impact is the House having passed legislation to codify Roe versus Wade having on your march or your feelings about any of this?
Well, we're very excited that Congressman Bowman, as well as Congressman Jones, are going to be able to join us. And Congressman Bowman is going to give us kind of the 411 on the legislation that was just passed. Some of the same group also put on a deadline for democracy rally, talking about the importance of getting rid of the filibuster. As we know right now, Democrats are in the majority of the nation in terms of voting population. The tyranny of the Senate minority is going to be preventing House legislation from becoming law. So one of the things we're going to have at this event are some action tables so that people can kind of carry the through thread from what is happening here to how voting and being active voters and citizens on all these topics is what we need to do to drive the change or to keep from changing and losing rights that we've had.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this was somewhat unaffiliated or independent. Can you compare this march to the big march that was international actually in 2017?
Sure. So first of all, this is off that annual cycle. This is a convening out of need, the very urgent needs that Jimena and Amy just brought up. And we're organizing this as a march for folks in Westchester. And there's, obviously some overlap with the National Women's March organization, but, right now I think it's most important that people come together on this topic for this urgent need, as opposed to perseverating over things that happened a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
So besides your,
also,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jimena, go ahead.
yeah, and it was also, very important to make it accessible, that it be local, that women have the ability to go locally and show support and know that they're also supported. So there's actually 19 marvelous, amazing women throughout the county from various walks of life who organized this event.
So besides yourselves and the two congressmen you mentioned, who else can we expect to be there and be speaking?
Sure, we have Cheryl Brennan from Sister to Sister International, Vincent Russell from Planned Parenthood, Hudson Patanik, Amy Vele will be with us from Hispanic Democrats, Dana Bergman, who's a writer and activist, Alexandra Biaggi from the New York State Senate, Amy Pollin from the New York State Assembly, Congressman Jamal Bowman, and Congressman Mondaire Jones will be joining us that day.
So why don't you give us all the details? Where, when, parking?
Parking. Well, first of all, so it is, as you mentioned, Laura, it's going to be Saturday, October 2nd at 1 p.m. And it's going to be at 111 Martin Luther King Jr. Drive. And there's a big statue there. That's where we'll be convening. If we have too many people, we might kind of shift over a little bit, but you'll find us because there'll be a lot of people there. We are going to suggest that people carpool as much as possible. I think that would be one great thing people could do. And we often at these events find that there's ample parking at the Galleria. And that's pretty affordable to park there. And if you want to, I was just going to say, if you want to register, the easiest way to do it is to go to, if you're on Facebook, is to go to Indivisible Westchester's public page or their community page. And you can find all the details there, as well as an ability to register. You don't need to register, you can just walk up, but it just helps us and our partners of the White Plains Police Department plan, if we know, have a good head count.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, that's October 2nd. And you said Indivisible Westchester's Facebook page for information?
That's correct, their public page.
Thank you for joining us. For LMC Media Productions, I'm Maura Carlin.